Hello, and welcome back to this third lecture on the basic concepts of DNA for scientific ethics. What we're going to take a look at this is heredity, or basically how these DNA molecules are going to be passed from the parent to offspring. And keep in mind that if we're passing on these DNA molecules from parent to offspring, we're going to be passing on the messages that they're carrying. So the alleles and those genes that we're talking about in the previous lecture. Okay, so again, heritable traits, these DNA traits are going to be those traits that are passed from parents to offspring. And so genetics and the study of genetics and genetic engineering and genetic mapping and genetic sequencing and all of these things, genetics, is basically the study of how this biological information is going to be passed down from parent to offspring. And so we can see kind of a situation here where you have kind of a child, kind of a mother, a grandmother. I'm not quite sure why we got two people in here, but they're probably child, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, something like that. And so all of these individuals are going to be related to one another. And so we're going to have hereditable information that's going to be passed down from parent to offspring within the DNA that's going to go from the great-grandparent to the grandparent to grandparent to the parent to the child. And that's going to be important because then these individuals are going to be closely related to one another and their information is going to be similar. Not exactly similar, they're not exact clones of one another, but it's going to be similar to one another. Okay, so if you take a look at this, again, that idea is that in the normal body cell, we had two sets of those chromosomes. Remember all the way back to the first one, where we took a look at the 22 autosomes and the X and the Y chromosomes. So what's going to happen is a specialized process. And again, the process is called meiosis. And I'm not worried that you know meiosis for the purposes of this class. But it's basically a specialized cell division process which allows us to create gametes, to create the egg cells and the sperm cells. And what's going to be important is that we remember from when we talked about in vitro fertilization, and maybe, human biology, if you've had it before, that in order to, create a newborn, to create an offspring, you need to have an egg and sperm coming together. So if our normal body has two sets of these chromosomes, when the egg and sperm come together, what they're going to be doing is reestablishing those two sets of chromosomes. If we just had normal body cells coming together with normal body cells, we would have one generation that had two sets of chromosomes. The next generation is going to have 4 sets. The next generation is going to have 8 sets. Next generation, 16, 64, 128. And we see that in kind of in plants, some types of plants, but we don't really see that in animals as much. So what that means then is we have to have a specialized process where we're going to separate our chromosomes so that each egg and each sperm cell has one complete set of chromosomes. And so if we want to think about our encyclopedias, what that means is we want to have an egg cell that's going to have one copy of Encyclopedia Book A, one copy of Encyclopedia Book B, one copy of Encyclopedia Book C, and all the way through. We don't want to go through and say, okay, we're going to get 2 copies of A, 2 copies of B in the egg, and we're going to hope that it's going to match up with a sperm cell that doesn't have any copies of A and B, but has 2 copies of C. It just gets burdensome. It gets complicated, and it's just not going to work. And so what's going to happen in meiosis, and again, lots of diagrams here showing a fancy process of what's going through, we're basically going to separate our chromosomes so that one complete set is going to go into one product, and one complete set is going to go into the other product. They can recognize eggs are going to be produced in the female, sperm are going to be produced in the male, but we're going to produce gametes, the egg cells or the sperm cells, that have one complete set of chromosomes. So with our encyclopedia example, each egg and each sperm is going to have a complete A, a complete B, a complete C, complete D, all the way through. And it's going to match up through the process of fertilization with another set of encyclopedias, a complete set, kind of matching it up to reestablish these 2 complete sets of chromosomes in the normal body cells. So again, what we've got in the process of fertilization is going to reestablish those 2 sets of chromosomes. We're going to have one set of chromosomes from the sperm carrying the DNA from the father, merging in the process of fertilization with one set of chromosomes from the mother in the egg cell, which is going to produce that zygote, which is going to have 2 sets of chromosomes. And that now has those 2 complete sets that we would normally see in most of the cells within your body. Now, if we take a look at it, offspring are going to have a combination of traits from both parents, because again, we're going to have 1 set of chromosomes coming from the father in the sperm, and 1 set of chromosomes that are coming from the mother to produce our offspring down here. And so this offspring is going to have DNA molecule and genes from the father, and DNA and molecules from the genes from the mother. And again, as you take a look at that, you're going to see that you're going to have certain characteristics that are going to be similar to your mother, and certain characteristics that are going to be similar to your father. And we also know that, you know, siblings tend to look like one another, or at least are more likely to look like one another than just random people within class or random people kind of out in public. Now, if we take a look at this, and again, this is a little bit complicated, but I'm not worried that you know how to do this. I just want you to understand kind of the ways in which kind of information comes together and kind of mixes and matches to produce kind of a unique offspring as we're going through. And so what we're going to do along this side is we're going to look at egg cells. And we're going to assume that, in that process of meiosis, we produced 1 egg over here with 1 complete set of chromosomes, another egg over here with 1 complete set of chromosomes. And it may be different than the chromosomes that are present here, different messages, different information within each one of these cells. And the mother is going to produce egg cells, and egg cells are all going to look relatively the same. They're all going to have an X chromosome within it. The male, the father, is going to produce sperm cells. Again, the sperm cells are going to have 1 complete set of chromosomes, but when we take a look at the sex chromosomes, we know that we've got an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. And so some of the sperm cells are going to have an X chromosome, and some of the sperm cells are going to have a Y chromosome. And so even though we can't see it on these X's over here from the mother, these X's are going to carry different information. But because when we take a look at it from far back at the molecule wrapped up, DNA molecule wrapped around these proteins, we're not going to see what the differences are in the messages. It becomes very clear when we see the difference between an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. But we could do the same type of thing looking at any of the genetic messages, any of the genes, any of the alleles that are present in the father and the mother. So what this box represents is the process of fertilization. And so this egg and the sperm coming together is going to produce this individual with an XX. So this is going to be a female. This egg and this sperm coming together is going to result in this XX. So another female over here. This egg up here at the upper left combining with the sperm over here, we get X and Y. So this is going to be an individual that is going to be male because it has an X and a Y chromosome. This kind of possibility, this X egg coming together with this Y egg coming together is going to give us an XY, so another male. So I've done this as a square kind of showing all the different possibilities. Keep in mind that under most circumstances, the mother is going to produce 1 egg with each ovulation cycle. So it's going to be either this or that, and we're not going to know about that kind of ahead of time until we're looking at kind of the random product that's being produced. The male is going to be producing millions and millions of sperm cells, but only one of these sperm cells normally is going to fuse with the egg. So we're going to only see one of these products, but this is showing us the full range of things that could be occurring within the cells. So again, if we take a look at this, the offspring is going to receive 1 set of chromosomes from the father, 1 set of chromosomes from the mother. If we look exactly at the DNA molecule in a much finer detail, we're going to see 1 set of alleles, 1 set of these genetic messages from the father, and 1 set of alleles, 1 set of genetic messages from the mother. And they're going to come together. And so you're going to have this unique individual produced here through the process of fertilization. The zygote here, the fertilized egg that we talked about previously, is going to have this kind of unique combination of messages from the mother and the father. But assuming all of the autosomes and everything goes properly, they're going to have 1 completed set of messages from the mother, one complete set of messages from the father, one complete set of alleles from the mother, one complete set of alleles from the father, but they're going to mix and match. And so your set of alleles, your set of messages that you got from your mother and your father is going to have some similarities, but it's also going to have some differences from the messages and the alleles that your sibling may have received. And that, again, is why we're looking at the uniqueness from one individual to another individual. So if we take a look at this, and again, getting it into a little bit more complicated, what we're going to see here is we're going to have a large B, which is going to represent the information for brown eye color. And we're going to have a little b over here as the information for blue eye color. And they're going to be kind of a different way in which these messages can be expressed. It's going to be set up so that this large B, if an individual has a large B message and a little b message, that large B message is what's going to be expressed by the individual. And so if we've got a situation over here, a blue-eyed individual crossed with a blue-eyed individual is always going to have blue offspring over here, blue-eyed offspring over here. Without getting into too much of this, we're looking at fruit flies or mice or things like that. If we had a true breeding brown-eyed individual over here that had large B, you know, both large B messages on both their alleles, matching up with an individual over here that also had the large B message on their alleles, they're going to produce an individual down here that's large B. But when we go and take a look at their offspring that's produced from an individual with brown eyes with an individual with blue eyes, what we're going to see is an offspring that has brown eyes being present. And again, that's going to tell us that we've got the large B message, the brown-eyed message coming from this parent over here. And this little b message, this little blue eye message, the information for making blue eyes, is still present, but it's hidden. And that's going to be described as what's scientifically referred to as a recessive allele. It's a trait that's hidden. We haven't lost it. You know, it could reappear in the next generation. But as long as that large B message there, that large B is going to be the one that's going to be present and observable within the offspring. And so what we're looking at here is just a very simple example of a trait where we have one message which is present within the chromosomes, one message that's present within the cells. And so that's a very, very simple form of inheritance. But in most cases, most types of inheritance, I'm sorry, I did want to emphasize, okay, we'll come back to that in a second. And so we get this individual here where we have large B information, little b information, information for brown eyes, information for blue eyes. That blue eyes information is hidden. If these individuals were to reproduce, so a person that had brown-eyed parents and blue-eyed parents mated with another parent or another individual that had brown-eyed parents and blue-eyed parents, we'd have this situation. And if we were to use that little square that we had before, we're going to see that most of the offspring are going to have at least one large B allele, one large B message, one message for the brown eyes, but about 1 in 4 is going to have that little b message on both of their alleles, that have both of that coming from the mother and coming from the father. And so we can have brown-eyed parents giving blue-eyed offspring over here. So again, that little b message, that little b allele isn't lost. It was basically hidden because that large B was dominant and kind of covered up for it in this generation up here. Now, this is simple genetics. This is simple kind of inheritance where one gene is directly associated with a single observable trait. In most cases, what we're going to be looking at are lots of genes impacting on it. And so if we take a look at height, skin color, IQ, lots of other things are going to be controlled by more than one gene. And this is going to be referred to as polygenetic inheritance. And so because of that, you can have this full range of, height, where it's not just tall people and short people. It's not just dark skin and light skin. It's every shade kind of in between, every height kind of in between, depending upon how many messages are going to be going towards height, and how many messages are going to be going towards shortness, or how many messages going through kind of like a darker melanin kind of complexion versus a lighter melanin complexion. And so because of that, it becomes a lot more complicated when we have multiple genes that are interacting with one another. Compounding with that is that there are often environmental factors that will contribute to the variability of a trait. And so, if we're taking a look at height, height is going to be genetic, but it also has a diet component. And so if you're malnourished, you're not getting enough vitamins and nutrients, you're probably not going to grow to your full height. And so because of that, even though genetically you could be very tall, if you have a very poor diet, you could end up being much shorter than what your genes would be telling you to be. And so this is just an idea, just an indication about some of the complexities that are present with this genetic information that's going to be directing what the cells are going to be doing and how we can then observe that in an individual. Okay, so that finishes up our kind of introduction to what DNA is, the basic concepts of DNA and how DNA works. What I want you to do for a reading for this is take a look at another NIH.government primer. Take a look at the sections on cells and DNA, how genes work, inheriting genetic conditions, and genetics and human traits. Again, I'm not focused in on you understanding the minute details of the science. I want you to understand enough of the science so that when we're talking about how things are inherited or how we can correct the message, correct the DNA, it's going to change the expression of the cell or change the protein that's being produced. So get a good view for it, get a good feeling for it, but don't feel as if you have to memorize all of the details and get all of that. I'm looking at a much broader sense for the purposes of this course. So that finishes up the lectures for this. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Come back for, I guess, part D, the fourth of this series of lectures, where we're going to talk about the activity for today. Thank you and have a great day.